What's up everyone, Bradley Jack Design here with another design breakdown. This time we're going to take a look at this Jimmy Butler graphic I created. So the reason I wanted to create this graphic was I wanted to make something that was red. I had the intentions of doing like this rainbow series of graphics. So this is the red one. It's got a lot of orange in it, but I'm just going to go down here and we're just going to go through and see what it took to create this graphic. I had a lot of fun making this graphic. It was something sort of out of my comfort zone, had a lot of lighting in it, and that's what I was trying to do. Something that like Derco or Callaway Creative would make. Something with a lot of lighting, very dramatic. And I think I ended up doing that. So let me get rid of all these layers we have. It's a bunch of layers. Let me make sure there aren't any layers in here I don't want. But I'll basically show you sort of the lighting techniques I used for this, which you might have seen before, but it's always good to get a refresher on everything. There's a bunch of layers in here. There's a lot more layers in here than I thought. Okay. So starting off, we've got our background here. Let's see what we have. So we have I think this is like the Flame Nebula. I like to look at Google and find images from NASA because you can use them. So this is like, I think the Flame Nebula that I have a gradient map on, and I'll use this gradient map here a lot. So this has the colors from the Miami Heat in it. So I've got the gradient map there. I've got Jimmy Butler in the back. And then let me skip around here so I can show you some stuff actually. I've got Jimmy Butler in the back and then I have Jimmy in the front. Now, the way I designed, I think I did everything with Jimmy in the front here, right here first, and then through this Jimmy in the background. So let me actually start there. And actually how we started, I think, was I set up the scene that he's in. So I have this photo that I got from Unsplash. This is the photo I used. I was gonna have him like in an actual cave, but then I thought just the edges would work out. So this is a photo from Unsplash that I edited. There were some like stairs and stuff over here I got rid of. Like you can see here, there's some stairs there. So I just took this, stretched it out a little bit. I added back in this middle portion using the stamp tool. And then I added this same gradient map that we saw before, except this one has white in it. And then I've got a couple layers on here to lighten some of the shadows and then lighten the edges even more. So these are some curves adjustment layers where I boosted up the blacks and then basically painted back in areas I wanted to brighten up, because it's going to brighten up the darkest spots. It's going to brighten everything up. So that's the background we have there. But then I have a bunch of other stuff on that as well. So I have this photo. I found this random like lava texture. So I've got it set up in here. Let me pull it up. So this is some lava texture I found. So I have it like masked out, and I pulled it together and basically just have it as a little bit of a textural overlay on the back here. I then use the same gradient map, the same colors at least in the gradient map. We don't want that. So then we've got the red, the yellow, and the white just to give this some more color. I then added another gradient map on top of this. And these all actually have blend if modes to it, where I basically had it so it wouldn't affect some of the background layers. So this one is affecting a little bit of the black. So it's really only affecting the highlights is what these are doing. So once I had this set up, I then added this ball in the background. So I found this, I'm trying to think if I rendered this ball. I found this 3D ball, which I have a couple different layers essentially where it's Gaussian blurred. It's in the front here with a gradient map on top of it, the same gradient map that we have here. So I wanted to make this sort of a light source. So I have the ball screened with a Gaussian blur here. I have it normal. I have one behind it screened with a Gaussian blur. And then I just have some screen layers where I painted with a red brush to make that background sort of glow behind it. So I have that as the light source, but I should have something else in here. So I have this lens flare in front of it to give it have it give off more light. And that has a levels layer on it to get rid of some of the fog, and then 2 gradient map layers on it to add in that color as well. So I've got that to add in some lighting from the background. Let me see what else we have here. So I've got a gradient map on top of this. Okay, we'll go back to that a little bit later. So since we have this light source here, these layers are then applying that light source, I guess up here. I think that's accidental. So it's applying it to this background area to brighten up this lava down at the bottom. I've got a curves layer that you can see does nothing. I don't know why that's there. This layer lightens up at the bottom, and then this layer is giving a fine edge rim lighting to all of the border. And then one more is a gradient map that is applied to darken up some of these areas as well. So that's some of the ground stuff. Then I've got sort of some fire coming off the back over here that's masked to that. Let me see what else we have in here. It's been a while since I've opened this Photoshop file up. I thought I had more lighting effects on that stuff in the background. This might be somewhere else. Maybe not. Okay, so we have the scene set up. So then I wanted to add some elements to the front. So I just masked out some rocks that were in the initial scene, and I have a couple curves layers on top of them. And these actually have a bunch of edits to it. So like, here's the regular rock that I cut out. I have a curves layer to brighten up some of the highlights. I have another curves layer to brighten up some highlights as well that I painted in. And this is based on the light source of it coming through. So anything that I thought would be touching it, I went ahead and added to it. And I have a gradient map on top of that. So with the gradient map, you can see the highlights I'm adding back in. Let me get this in a better position so you guys can see. So with the gradient map, you can see these I'm adding in highlights. So I did that for both of these, and they have slight blurs on them. They have Gaussian blurs of 7, just so I can have it make it look like they're in the forefront. And then have some front depth. You can see here. This is some stuff I did at the end for final tweaks. We'll plug those in later so I can show you the full effect of those. We've got some other final tweaks, so we don't want to touch those yet. So let's toss Jimmy back in here. So this edited photo of Jimmy Butler, you can see, I just wanted him sort of up in space, sort of Mufasa-like. So then I've got some layers here that I actually took these from my Pau Gasol graphic. Tweaked it around his eyes to make his eyes glow. If you want a further breakdown on how that happened, check out my Pau Gasol breakdown. But essentially I just took the layers from that, copied it over, and gave him sort of these glowing genie looking eyes. So we've got that going on there. So we've got Jimmy in the back. We've got some ground stuff. So now let's talk about, oops, there we go. Let me turn this back on. So now it's the editing of Jimmy Butler here in the front is what we have. So we have this light source coming from right here. So I have a couple layers here, which are creating a shadow right from where his legs touch the lava. And basically I just took this photo of Jimmy Butler and stretched it out, and then used that as a selection for a curves layer with the highlights drugged down to darken up that area, and then blurred it a little bit and made it slightly darker towards his legs. We've got the flames there. Let me go in here and let's look at the actual bread and butter of how this looks cool. We've got Jimmy Butler here. So I have this gradient map layer set to luminosity to 60%. And basically I have darker colors. Now I could have gone in and just used like an exposure layer and set it down negatively. At the time, this is how I did this. So basically I'm just making him darker and then adding a little bit of tint to him using a gradient matte set to 20%. You can probably do all of this also in just a curves layer. But then I have a bunch of curves layer, which is what I use to do the lighting. So I have a layer that's giving him, let's zoom in here. I have a layer here that's giving him a little bit of a ring light around him, and that is applied to only mostly the highlights. Then I have a curves layer that is adding a little bit more of a ring light. I have a curves layer that is darkening up him completely. So it's darkening up, giving him more of a shadow behind him. I have a layer darkening up the area here. I have another curves layer doing a little bit more general lighting around him. I basically wanted to make it look like light is curving around his body like you would see in a realistic setting. This is again another ring light. And then we have some areas where I'm throwing in highlights around where the lighting is touching. So this curves layer is me painting around the edges of his body essentially, because that's where the light source is. It's behind him. And then we've got this one, which is really brightening up around him, just painting around. I have a selective color layer on this to tweak the reds to make it more red and match a little bit better of our back scene. I then have a curves layer, and this curves layer is actually his numbers cut out on the back of his jersey, and I just have a curves layer to brighten it up. And I did that because I used that and copied it a couple times with a Gaussian blur and a gradient map, and that's going to make it so it looks like it's glowing. And then I think I duplicated that a couple times. These are pretty similar. So now it kind of looks like he's got these glowing letters on, or numbers on his back. So those are the numbers. So then we have some front depth. So these are just some stock images of some fire and stock images of some sparks that I have in the front here to add a little bit of depth. So this is what we've got going on. There we go. Let me move it so you can see it. And then I have some tweaks in the front. So I've got some more sparks in the front. I have a lens dirt applied to the whole thing with the same gradient map we used to make it red and orange. I have a gradient map set to soft light at 24%, which you can see is making it a little bit darker, giving everything a little bit of color. I have a general curves layer, which is brightening up everything, but it's only being applied to the highlights because I wanted this to be a little bit brighter. Then I have a color lookup. This one's probably $23.95. Yep, $23.95 by Adobe, the Kodak 5218. That's set to 50%. I then have teal plus orange contrast, teal orange plus contrast, which is giving it a little bit more contrast, and it's adding in teal and orange, and I have that at 25%. I then have a selective color to really brighten up the reds and accentuate that color. So I'm getting rid of some cyan, adding in magenta and yellow, and the yellows I didn't touch, so it's just in the reds. So this is what we've got going on. Then I did some final tweaks on this layer, as you can see. And that's just some camera raw. So let's open up camera raw and see what we did. So I did no effects here. I didn't tweak anything up there. I tweaked some detail. I sharpened the object a little bit. Apparently I did some color grading. But I don't see what I did. But optics, I went in here, added a vignette, and distorted it slightly. And then under effects, I gave it a little bit more of a vignette. So basically what this layer does is it's adding some more contrast to it. And you can see it's warping it slightly, like a lens warp, which is making it more focus on the center here because the edge is a little bit warped. And then I've got my logo on here as it is. So a lot of this, let me make sure we've got everything on here because this matches. So a lot of this is lighting using curves layers, screen layers to do some of the lighting, and it's just layering on subtle details and subtle changes to make it look as realistic as possible. And then using the same gradient maps with the same colors in it so everything matches. If you want things to match, make sure you're using the same colors. So using the same colors in a gradient map is definitely going to help you out and be able to do that. Then if you add stuff in the front for depth, this piece looks completely different if you don't have these two rocks in the front and some of these sparks in the front adding depth, because you can see we've got one layer here, we've got a layer here where Jimmy is too, and then a layer in the background where this Jimmy is in the background as well. So that's how you can add depth to some of your designs, is having those multiple layers of things in the front and throughout the back. But that's what it took to create this design. So I hope you guys learned something from this. If you guys want me to go over anything in more detail, let me know. If you want exclusive access to some exclusive design breakdowns and tutorials, make sure to take a look at my Patreon, which you can find in the comments in the description below. Other than that, make sure to like and subscribe and have a nice day. Thanks.